It's all pro wrestling. It's all make-believe. Michael McLean, BrassBallsVideos.com. I'm an ex-pro and amateur hockey coach turned 8-figure entrepreneur. You can sign up for these daily videos. They're free. There's no charge. BrassBallsVideos.com. I also have a special free report titled 5 Ways to Unfuck Your Life. In the next 30 days, you can get a copy of that special report in PDF, no charge, at BrassBallsVideos.com. The link is below for a couple more days if you want that free report. So, admittedly, I love pro wrestling. I've never watched the matches. I've never followed the characters per se, but I have always been fascinated with the entertainment business, if you will, of pro wrestling. I grew up when WrestleMania was first launched and Vince McMahon, one of the greatest promoters of all time, started with the WrestleManias, with the Hulk Hogans and the Mr. T's and the Muhammad Ali's and the Donald Trumps, and literally built the WWF and then the WWE into one of the largest entertainment companies in the world. People used to say to me all the time that weren't familiar with wrestling, because I'm a hockey guy, I'm a football guy, I'm a tennis guy, and they would say, "You watch pro wrestling?" And they'd be like, "You know it's fake, Michael, right?" And I would say, "Yeah, I know it's fake. I don't watch the actual wrestling. I'm a marketer, I'm an advertiser, I'm a promoter, so I cannot not watch what a guy like Vince McMahon is up to." It is the infotainment business. It is the entertainment business. And I don't have to like the sport, or I don't have to be a fan of the actual sport of wrestling. I'm a fan of the business model. I'm a fan of that self-promotion, the storylines, the writers, the actors. I had the pleasure of meeting Ric Flair 10 years ago. One of the best guys I ever met. Certainly as graceful as any pro hockey player I've ever dealt with, or football player or coach. Just a great, great guy, Ric Flair. Which brings me to the topic of today's broken iPhone video. It's all pro wrestling. It's all pro wrestling. And you know who said that? My 90-year young father said that to me a few years ago. And I've always laughed, because when I was a young pro hockey coach, young amateur coach, even a young entrepreneur, I started washing windows and doing garage sales and all this stuff at age 12 till now. So I've been at it a long time. And I used to be so naive, like all young people. I used to believe what I saw in the news was real. I used to believe that politicians had the country and the people that they serve in their best interests. I thought that the president or the prime minister was a noble person and profession. I thought that business people were kind and generous and ethical. I thought my fellow hockey coaches and competitors in sport were fair and, again, ethical. And, doctors and the medical profession, teachers, you just name it. Like very, very naive, like most people. And I'll never forget the time my dad said to me years ago, he said, "Michael, you realize it's pro wrestling. It's all pro wrestling." He knew I loved the entertainment business. He knew I loved sports entertainment. So I was talking about politics, or I was talking about business or Wall Street, or I was talking about, I don't know, whatever the heck it was, big government or the coming election. And he leans over at the lake. We're out on the boat and he says, "It's all pro wrestling." And I'll never forget that, because he literally framed how life really is as a small business owner like you, as an entrepreneur like you, as a husband, as a father, as a grandfather like you. He literally framed the real world. It was that was the day that I grew up by a decade. I was always, I didn't understand Napoleon Hill's concept of accurate thinking. So I was, as a younger man, I would look at things the way I wish they were, almost through rose-colored glasses, kind of, I wish things were that way. I would see the employee as the way I wish she was, or I would see things, I would always see the glass half full. And it was an immature way in business that got my teeth kicked in several times, hiring the wrong person, not terminating a person that's unprofitable, all this kind of stuff. Running a soup kitchen or a not-for-profit or a halfway house instead of a for-profit business. So, very interesting. It's all pro wrestling. And then I was talking to my dad last summer out at the lake, and we were sitting there out on the dock, and I said, "Pop, remember when you said it's all pro wrestling? Life is all pro wrestling." He'd been in business 71 years. My dad retired at age 85 5 years ago. That's 71 years he was an entrepreneur since age 15. He quit school at grade 9. So that's a guy who's been around, as he said. I've seen this all full circle. I've seen the Jimmy Carter years. I've seen inflation. I've seen the real estate meltdowns. I've seen the gas lines. He talking about what's happening in the world now. He goes, "This is just the second time round for me." He goes, "I've seen, the mortgage rates up in the 14-15%. I've seen the gasoline lines. I've seen the Jimmy Carter wearing a sweater, telling people to turn down their thermostats and put on a sweater." He goes, "I've seen it all. I've seen it all, except now it's full circle for him." So he said, it's all pro wrestling. And I said, now that you said that to me a decade or more ago, I said, I can literally apply that line to almost everything. And it's helped me make so many better decisions as an entrepreneur, as a husband, as a father, when I go in thinking it's all pro wrestling. It's not true, or it's not completely true, or it's not reality. And my dad leans over and he said to me, he goes, "Son," he says, "there's a couple of things that you're a world-class person at, right?" And I said to him, "Yeah, I've worked the last 30 years to become what I consider a world-class marketer. I'm a top 1% marketer." He goes, "Right." He goes, "That's one of your talents that you've worked at over the last 3 decades. You're one of the best marketers, promoters, advertisers, copywriters I've ever seen." So he said, when you were learning about copywriting, advertising, and marketing over the last 3 decades, he goes, how much of it was BS? How much of it was untrue? How much of it was fantasy sold as reality? And I said, when I first got started and I started to learn marketing, I said the biggest thing I learned to become a world-class marketer over the years was I had to unlearn all of the stuff that I had learned or thought I knew about marketing. He said, exactly. He said, now that you're a world-class direct response marketer, what percentage would you say of the general public marketing, advertising is correct? Is cold, hard truth correct? And I said, less than 1% of 1%. television ads, radio ads, Facebook ads, coaches, consultants. I said it's 99.9% pro wrestling. He goes, exactly. How many mentors have you had in the marketing and advertising game that you truly believed in, weren't full of horse shit, and were the real deal? I said, I can probably count them on one hand. The Dan Kennedys, the John Carltons, the Gary Halberts. He goes, exactly. The rest of it, pro wrestling. It's not real. He said, when did you transform in terms of marketing? When did you put both feet on the gas pedal and take off? I said, when I started to apply the discipline that I learned in the book Think and Grow Rich. Napoleon Hill's least popular rule or law is accurate thinking. Seeing things as they really are, seeing things as they really are, not as you wish they were, not as we hope they would be, and not even the way they should be, but seeing things through an accurate lens. This is exactly who it is. It's like Bill Parcells saying, a team that's 15-1 is 15-1. A team that's 1-15 is 1-15. No better, no worse. You are who you are in pro sports. Well, Napoleon Hill felt the same thing about in life and business. If you made $57,000 last year, you made $57,000 last year. If you made seven figures, you made seven figures. If your receptionist is a 6.5 performance-wise out of a 10, she's a 6.5 performance out of a 10. We are who we are. The scoreboard never lies. So my dad said, what do you think about politics? He says, he goes, I know you don't follow mainstream politics. You have a couple of guys that provide you with the information you need. I said, it's all pro wrestling, Dad. I said, it's all pro wrestling. It's always been pro wrestling all the way through. Doesn't matter where we are. If their lips are moving, a story's being told, the agendas, it's never as it's supposed to be, but it's pro wrestling. He said, exactly. So to curate it, to swift sort it, and to keep that distraction out of your life. You're not missing anything. It's actually entertainment. It's no different than pro wrestling. It's not reality. Mainstream politics is not reality. It's pro wrestling. So then he leans over and he says, what do you think about the news? He says, I know you teach the guys you don't participate in the bought and paid for mainstream news. You don't have any access to it. But he says, you're a pretty informed guy. Because once again, you listen to a couple of guys that you trust, and that's where you get your news and your politics. So I said, Dad, it's all pro wrestling. It's all fantasy sold as reality. It's not real. It's unicorns, it's rainbows, whatever you want to call it, but it's pro wrestling. He said, exactly. So curating that stuff out of your life, getting it off your phone, getting it out of your life, he says, it hasn't cost you anything, have it? I said, no. It's like I'm not watching pro wrestling anymore. He says, there's a happiness industry now. Every single person deserves to be happy all the time. There's happy coaches, happy consultants, happy places at work. There's happy CEO programs. Happiness is an entitled right now. Everybody deserves to be happy. My dad was laughing. He said, what do you think of that kind of stuff? And I said, it's all pro wrestling. I said, it's the happiness industry. It's the pill selling industry. It's the mental health industry. It's the therapy industry. He said, right, it's all pro wrestling. It has no basis whatsoever in reality. He said, why don't we talk a little bit about pro sports? The NFL, the NBA, the NHL. He said, whatever. He said, what do you think of those sports? And he said, what about the regular seasons? And I said, it's almost all pro wrestling. He's like, guys aren't playing. There's the load management. He says, until there's the playoffs, same in golf with the majors, until there's the playoffs, pro sport now is just a stage for social justice warriors and mouthpieces to talk about their latest cause. He goes, right. He says it's all pro wrestling. As long as you get in the playoffs, that's all that matters. Anybody can win once you get in the playoffs. But he said it's not based, pro sport is no longer based in reality. He said, you know, there's no concept that's even close. It's all fantasy sold as reality. And I just went through, he goes, what about the foods that we're told to eat? He said, you know, I was told when you kids were growing up, you know, bacon and eggs, don't ever eat eggs, cholesterol, we're all going to die of cholesterol. There was doctors, you know, selling or promoting cigarettes in magazine ads and chewing tobacco and all this stuff. And he said, here we are 30, 40, 50 years later. What do you know about nutrition? What do you know about healthcare? I said, Dad, I have to admit it's all pro wrestling. None of it's based in reality, and it's not true. It's not true. Like eggs, oh, don't eat eggs, don't eat too many eggs, don't eat too much beef, too much protein. Man, when I was one of the top 50 amateur tennis players in the country, I was on the Eat to Win diet. The Eat to Win diet was all wheat, all grains, all carbs. I had spaghetti every day of my life. Now it's the complete opposite. It's the high protein, all that, you know, and eggs and meats and all this other stuff. So regardless of what you adhere to or believe in, it's all been pro wrestling. It's not, there's none of it that's based in reality. Same thing with fitness. What they were talking about 20 years ago, pro wrestling. What they're talking about 10 years ago, pro wrestling. What they're talking about today on anti-social media will be pro wrestling in another couple years. Like it's just all, none of it is based in accurate thinking and none of it is based in reality. So interesting mindset for really cementing Napoleon Hill's discipline of accurate thinking. Seeing your employees exactly as they are. Seeing your marketing exactly as it is. Seeing your marriage exactly as it is. Seeing your relationship with your children exactly as it is. Seeing your health, your fitness, your time management exactly as it is. Building your legacy, doing things with significance attached exactly as they are. And then the great thing about understanding that it's all pro wrestling, whatever we're being fed, our inputs are being fed on purpose. Don't be one of these guys who gets all bent out of shape when somebody disagrees or somebody says this or somebody says that. Are you kidding me? Run your own race, vote with your feet, vote with your wallet, and live your life. If all of a sudden I don't agree anymore with Disney or Netflix or Budweiser or the NBA or the NFL, I don't get all flustered. I don't expend my finite time and my valuable energy into any of it. I just vote with my feet in my wallet. I just curate things out of my life, swift sword things out of my life, cut the rope with things out of my life that no longer serve me. And things will come and go in your life. People will come and go. Employees will come and go. Habits will come and go. Ideas and thinking will come and go. And it's always a fluid situation where you're curating, swift sorting, and cutting the rope. That's how you continue to get better and improve every single day. But understanding that almost all of it is pro wrestling, being sold to the great unwashed arses, that it's all on purpose. All the political agendas, all the stuff being sold in the public schools to the parents and to the children, all of it is pro wrestling. All of the Main Street news, pro wrestling. All of politics, pro wrestling. Big pill business, pro wrestling. All of it. News, sports, you name it. Big Brother, all pro wrestling. And once you understand that as soon as they're telling you something that it's not true, it's not accurate, you can then be the independent thinker you need to be and figure it out on your own as a thinking person. AI, oh, it's the next big thing. It's gonna destroy this, or it's gonna do this, or it's gonna be the best thing. It's all pro wrestling. Somewhere in there is the truth, and it's your job to figure out what is that truth. But don't take somebody else's opinion. Don't take a mainstream general public opinion of anything, because it's all fantasy sold as reality. So I don't even know where I was going with that, other than the fact it's one of the greatest things my dad ever taught me. It's all pro wrestling, Michael. If you really want to figure something out, you need to figure it out yourself. You need to be an independent thinker, not something you see on Twits and Twitters or on Instagrunt or on Fakebook, or something you read on Fox News or CNN, or something that Creepy Joe said or one of his henchmen. No. Think for yourself. Think deeply for yourself. Put the phone away every day for a few hours, read some great books, get outside in nature, write, be present with your wife and your kids. But above all, every day, use this God-given prefrontal cortex. Think for yourself and teach your children to think. Does this make sense? Everything that went on, with the restrictions and the pandemic, we would have been a lot further ahead if everybody would have stopped and said, okay, does this make sense? Are we dealing with the truth, or are we dealing with unqualified opinions? Are we dealing with facts, or are we dealing with opinions? And myself as a marketer and as an entrepreneur, I've always got to know I'm dealing with the facts. Opinions and book reports are deadly. I can't deal with book reports and unqualified opinions. Oh, Michael, it's like the old fat doctor syndrome, right? Taking medical and health advice from the fat doctor, they used to call it, or the smoking doctor, or taking financial advice from the broke financial planner. Like, if they're not kicking ass in that area of their life or in their business, you can't listen, you can't follow, you can't consume, you can't have anything to do with them. Unless they've already won at the highest level, whatever area it is that you're looking for help, if they haven't already won at the highest level and are still winning today, you can't follow them, you can't listen to them, you can't give them energy, you can't give them focus, you can't argue with them, you can't any of that stuff. Because if you wouldn't pay for their advice, you can't take it. If you wouldn't pay for their advice, you can't take it. And the other thing to look at and always ask yourself about these so-called pretend experts is, would you trade places with that person who's promoting that advice? Are they doing so well in that particular area that you would switch places with them in that area? Would you switch health with them? Would you switch marketing with them? Would you switch? And if they can't pass that, you can't follow them, you can't listen to them, you can't like them, you can't view them, you can't spend any time with them. It's all pro wrestling. So once again, this beautiful handwritten card I've got here, 5 ways to unfuck your life in the next 30 days. Won't take that long. BrassBallsVideos.com. I'll leave that up for a couple more days. You can download it, digital, print it, whatever the hell you want to do. BrassBallsVideos.com. Enter your email and I will email that printable PDF special report to you as soon as you opt in. 2 words that changed my life. It's all pro wrestling. Don't believe or listen to anything you hear unless you check it out yourself. 2 words that changed my life, 2 words that'll change yours. Be relentless.